All righty. Good morning and good afternoon again. This is our monthly web tips series starting up here. And I will open up our curtain here, sort of like that. This is our CPS web tips monthly webinar. And my name is Scott Swan. And so it's been about a year or two since I've done one. So just a few housekeeping information here. Everybody is muted. And of course, any questions you have, you can certainly ask in the chat window for Zoom. So feel free to do that. And I have someone standing by that can help me with getting the questions to me, and then we will try to answer them as best we can. So thank you very much. And again, staring at myself is not good. So this is my mug shot, but I'm just about 75 pounds lighter than that now. But here's my experience. Lots of years in the IT world, over 10 years of Winshuttle ShareViz workflow experience, along with a bunch of other experience. I'm also the solution care manager here at Clear Process Solutions. So that is an extra role I have here. And today's session is on keeping Winshuttle workflow running lean and fast. We here at CPS see this all the time, and we work with lots and lots of clients. I work with personally that we try to get their environments working correctly. If we come in later, if we install and deploy the product ourselves, we tend to try to set up some of this early on, and also just keep the client working well under this. And there are quite a few optimizations. We're going to really talk about the main three that I usually see, and that would be archiving, mark inactive processes, and then the purge process data. And if we get a few minutes, there is a little bit of bonus material I think I have on the PowerPoint too, just on something else with optimization too. So, well, let's get started on our first topic, and that will be archiving. So in Winshuttle, archiving doesn't happen automatically. So you have to actually go and schedule this type of action, and you have to do some preparation beforehand too. So why archiving? Why is that even a reason for that? Well, as you can see on my notes here, the process list, and the process list would be the list that the forum data is being stored in. So the process list can grow fairly large. And some clients we see thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of these, right? And by default, SharePoint has a view threshold limit that's set. By default, it's actually 5,000. Many clients will change that to maybe 10,000, 15,000 or something. I've even seen clients change it to 50,000. And so because of this view threshold limit and the large size of lists, and lists in SharePoint don't query very fast anyway, right? And so if you've ever done any querying of a SharePoint list, it is a little slow compared to like a database. And so as these lists get large, Winshuttle actually performs much slower, plain and simple there. So it can impact the web parts on the main page. Sometimes you'll get errors on the web parts if you're over the threshold limit. And other times it just may slow everything down and slow form loads and form submits and everything. So all of that together can actually impact performance greatly. So what happens when we archive? Well, archiving is exactly what I write here. It actually is really lowering the count in the process list. That's it. So it's actually moving the record that's in the process list to another list somewhere else, so that it's not a part of the production process, right, of the web part and the submit form and all that. So you're taking that item out of the view of Winshuttle, so it doesn't have to query through that. So that's what it does. It just shrinks the process list. And so what kinds of things can be archived? Well, only completed processes, and that would be completed as canceled or completed as really you completed the process. And if you know me, I like demos, so let me show you what we're talking about, because that's the best way to see that. So on archiving, so the first thing that you have, and this is actually a production list, by the way, obviously it's a small one, but if you can imagine you having thousands of these items in here, right? The goal is to shrink this list down. And the first thing you need to be able to do with archive is you need to be able to prepare a destination list for that. And the destination list is going to be a SharePoint list. So I already have an archive site here. So what we usually do with a client is we'll create them, or I will have them create a SharePoint site or a site collection that's going to be specific for archive, so that it'll hold the archive list data along the way. So it's not in the same spot as where everybody's seeing the production data. So we'll create a site, and then we'll create a custom list. And so how you create a custom list is really you just go into site contents, add an app, and there's this item called custom list. And this is a SharePoint custom list. And I will just call this Scott Test for the sake of it right now. And I will just create that. And it actually creates a list for you. And that's really the list. And you can actually see, there it is right there. So I already had one here I had actually done some archiving for, so we'll use that as the demo, but there's your list. And I really don't have to add anything else, because all the columns are going to be added by the archive process. So we don't really have to do anything there. So that's the first step in preparation for being able to archive, is to create a place to put these. And so we created a list. I'm going to use the one demo archiving in our step. And so the next step in the process is really go into your Workflow Central admin application. If you've not seen this application before, you may not have access, because this is actually where you can actually monitor your background jobs, monitor your processes, and also just check on things along the way. For my role, I tend to live in here, because I tend to do a lot of the troubleshooting and stuff like that. And so I will live in this type of environment, this app, quite often, where you can actually find this. But for archive purposes, we're going to really be focusing on this area right down here, the scheduler. So you can actually schedule several different types of tasks. So I'm going to click on the scheduler here. And this is where we actually see the types of things we've scheduled, by the way, but also up here is what you want to schedule. Up here in the top right corner, as you'll see a bunch of different items you can choose. The move archive data is the one we're focused on for this archive topic. So when I click on move archive data, you're actually going to have this form fill out that you can actually fill out. And of course, you're going to have a source. And this is where we're going to pick the source list that we're dealing with. And that's going to be found in your production site, wherever that is. And usually you have multiple sites, clients will. And then you're going to pick the source list. This is the production list you want to archive. So if you have a material request, that's going to be the material request list. For me, I created one for demo archiving. It's just a form I created. So this is the list I'm going to get and move the data from source-wise. And then you have to pick criteria. So this is where normally you're going to choose one of two items. The item ID is usually for testing, because we're just moving one item, which is rarely you need to, except for a test. But so date older than is one of the criteria you're going with. And of course, down here below on the date older than, it says how many days back do you want to go to start archiving. So what we normally see for clients that like to do this way, the date older than, usually you're going to see a 30, 60, or 90, right? I want to go farther back than 30 days. Anything older than 30 days or 60 days, I want to archive. If it's complete, right? If it's not complete, it's not going to archive it anyway. So, and 30, 60, 90 there. Or 120. Sometimes I think I've had one client that do like 120, but that's how you would do it if it's date older than. The other choice that I see a lot of is date range. And date range is going to go against your modified date on your list. So on this list item, the modified date is what it's going to work from here, right? So this will actually say, I want to do a archive of items that have a, maybe I'll do first quarter of 2020, right? So January 1st through March 30th, right? If I'm half okay, or 31st, sorry. Sometimes I get confused with 30 or 31s there. So date range, that's your March, that's your quarter 1, 2020, right? So if clients are like to archive in quarters or biannually or something like that, where they want to put it in a list specific for this range, then this is what we would normally see, a date range scenario. So what would happen there is you would create a list maybe called, you know, the demo archiving Q1 2020, right? Or something like that if you're using the date range scenario. So that's the two there. And so then what we would have here is a create column is going to be automatically checked, which is good. I don't know of any reason why you would not check this. And in fact, they shouldn't even, I'm not even sure why you would even uncheck that. But so that's going to actually copy all the columns that are from the destination over to the source. That's why we didn't have to create all those columns manually when we created that custom list. We just created it, and all it has in there is a title. That's it right now, but it will have more in it when we archive. And in fact, if you see here, this has already got all the columns that are in the demo. So you'll actually see that in this here, you can see that there's all of these columns that were copied over from here. So okay, so, and then you have the schedule, right? You can do it like right now, which is normally something like a demo, or you're trying to do this manually after hours or something, but normally you would work off of a schedule. And usually if you have a date older than choice here and you're doing like a 60-day or something, the day schedule is going to be something that's going to run every month. And so that's going to be reasonable for you here. So you might choose, this is the 20th. So I might choose the 20th. I want to run this maybe tonight. What I usually recommend is don't run this during like your normal business hours that may have the most traffic, because this can get a little bit CPU intensive. So the best thing to do is to pick it after hours. I might choose like 7:30 p.m. So this is going to run on every month on the 20th at 7:30 p.m. As you can see, the date range older than is just going to keep this going every month and keep going, right? And that's going to be good. If you use a date range, this is not so good. I mean, it's okay that it's going to run again, but it's not going to pick up any more data because your date range is already going to be archived. So it's going to use the same date range. So you're going to have to come in and edit this each month to change the date range. That's the only difference there along the way. And users to notify, you can put in your email addresses that you want to be notified that this occurred, and it copied so-and-so records over, and it completed, right? That's what you're going to get. You're going to get a summary. And then you're going to have to pick the destination here, and this is going to be your web application, which is normally the same one, but sometimes some clients will have multiples and have a special web application just for archive, and you would just pick it there. And then you're going to pick the site again, and now I have an archive site there, right? And now you're going to pick the list that you just created. That was mine, or this one here, right? I might want to archive this one. And these two items you don't have to worry about for workflow. The only items here, these items are for Excel workflows. So if you're archiving Excel workflows, which you can, you also have data files and supporting documents. And so you would actually have to create those two libraries in the archive site also, if you wanted to do that. So you would actually create a document library. So very similar to creating the list that we did here, you would actually go in and create a document library, a generic SharePoint document library that will hold those documents, you know, supporting documents and whatever else you wanted there. So that's what is going to happen there. So for workflow, there is no choices here, so that's good. So all you do then is you're just going to click save, and this is going to execute around this time at 7:30ish on the 20th at 7:30 p.m. So if I hit save, it's going to go into the queue. You'll see it in the queue up here. And you can, by the way, if you make a mistake, you can come in here and edit this or cancel this, right, too, along the way. So if you need to edit it, you can edit this later. And so that's how you schedule an archive. And of course, here is what the archive data looks like. Here, I will go back here and go into this one I archived earlier this morning. And so if you actually look at the data, it's actually here. And so you have your form XML, which is normally what you have in the production list, and all this other stuff that went along with the production list. You have the history of what happened to it. And then you have this flag. This flag is actually the item that makes it be able to archive. So this is the yes, this is the completed process. When it is marked yes, then it can archive. And of course, then you have all your other fields. If I had a bunch of other fields, it would copy those over. If I had attachments, it would move all of those over too. And so there is one attachment here that is part of a completed process, by the way, and that's called the MHT file. Some of you may know what that is. The MHT file is the final form view that is created by Winshuttle behind the scenes when the process is fully completed. It'll actually generate a final form. Obviously, this is just a basic form, but if you have a form, it's going to have your full form right here. So you can see the form, which is great. So you don't lose that if you archive. So if you're worried about losing that information, you don't lose it because you have an MHT file to look at the form. And you also have the history. Obviously, to read the history is not too easy right here, but the great news there is there's also a Winshuttle tool that gets installed into SharePoint that allows a view of that history XML. And so if you want to see the history of this item, and this again is one in the archive list, not the production list anymore, I can actually choose that. And then you have a little bit of a drop down, and then you see all the assignment information that you're getting here, right? So you can actually see what's going on. Obviously, most clients will have, this will be 20, 30, 40 lines, right? And so you'll see everything about what task and who reviewed it, who completed it, stuff like that. So that's what happens when you do an archive. It actually moves the archive item. And so these items now no longer exist in the production list anymore. These only exist there. So this list will actually drop down in size. So if you had 4,000 records here and you archive 2,000, then you drop down to 2,000. And so now Winshuttle likes that because it's a lot lower count it has to deal with. Performance gets a little bit better there. So, all right, so that was our topic one, archive. Now you notice I did not say anything about the database yet on this. So let's go back to our PowerPoint here. And let's go to our next topic here. And that'll be the mark inactive processes. This is kind of goes along with archiving to me. So when you archive records, it moves the archive data in the SharePoint list out of the SharePoint list and over to some other list. But what it doesn't do, and what I point out here, is it does not remove the database items. So the items are still in the database along the way. So to clear the database, you need to schedule either this task or the task we're going to look at in topic 3 here. So the mark inactive process, what it does is it actually goes through each item in the database that's complete and looks for the matching item in SharePoint. And if it's not found, then it says, hey, this item in the database is inactive. And so it's going to mark it inactive. And if you've chosen the correct choice in the mark inactive task, it's actually going to remove it from the database too. And that's a good thing because the other part of performance issues in Winshuttle is always going to be the database and how large it gets. So that's going to be a big issue. And so if I just archive 4,000 items in the database, mark inactive really is going to need to run because not only do I have 4,000 process records, if your process has 50 some task nodes to it, that's 4,000 times 50, right? And so that's how many database records you're going to get in the assignment table itself alone. So you got to realize that there's a lot of data going in and out of this system and getting added. And so the mark inactive is going to clear out the database record. Because that archive item no longer needs the database, you don't need the data in the database any longer. So because you can actually access it from the archive list item now and see everything about it. So that's what mark inactive processes do. This is a very time and CPU intensive process. So this IC can sometimes take between 1 and 6 hours to run. I've actually seen it run 6 hours one time before. So, and sometimes it even times out. You know, we have that issue too, where it's just so bad, the database is so bad, it can't even run this. So let's go back to the demo here. We're going to go to the same application that I was just showing you here. And of course, I'm going to click on Scheduler again here. Oh, if there's any questions, let me know on the archive, by the way. I don't know if I saw any. I apologize, Jody. I was supposed to pause there. You're okay. No questions. Okay. Okay. Very good. And feel free to ask anything, even if it's, quote, not about this, I might be able to answer it. I've been in the system a long time. So the mark inactive is another scheduler task up here. So mark inactive processes are right here. The scheduler is going to look a little different, a little bit different choices. You don't get to pick lists or anything like this. This is actually going to go through every completed item in the database to see if it has a matching SharePoint item. So it's actually doing a lot of work when we do this. That's why it takes so long, and that's why it's so CPU intensive. You have a choice of a dry run here. I'll let you know what that is. The dry run just kind of lets you know what it's going to do. So it still takes almost as long, but it doesn't do anything. It'll just email you and tell you what it's going to do, which I rarely use, or unless I'm demoing something, I don't ever use that. Delete inactive process. This is important to me. This is the checkbox I want to check normally. I want to remove this stuff from the database. That's the best option. If you don't, the data is still there, but it is marked inactive, and it does eliminate it from some of the queries that the engine does. But it doesn't remove it from the database, so the database is still cluttered up with a lot of extra records that it has to search through. So this is why I like to delete the inactive processes. And then again, here's your same choice of now or schedule. Obviously, this is an item you never want to run during a workday, work business time. This is an after hours, and you want to give it a lot of room, right? So if I was going to choose something for tonight, I would want it to run, you know, I'm doing an archive at 7:30, so maybe the archive might take about 30 minutes or so. So I might choose like 8:30 to schedule this, right? And then I would, based on how I know and my experience at this, at the company I work for, if I'm doing this, is if I know it takes about an hour, that's good. If I know it's going to take 4 or 5 hours, I may even move it forward more here to maybe 7:30 or something like that, and try to do that. So, and usually weekends are better. Like I usually pick a Friday night, Saturday, or a Sunday. It's usually when the least amount of effort is being applied to Winshuttle environment. So then I would hit save. And when you hit save, it just schedules it for that time again too. So it's going to run this process. And at the end of this, you're going to have the scheduler show us something probably that it says it found 1,000, 2,000, whatever. So mark inactive processes, anything that you archive is guaranteed going to be what they would call a orphaned record, and that's where the database still is there, but the record is not in SharePoint. So anything you archive is going to be guaranteed going to be mark inactive. Mark inactive will find it along the way there. So, and you noticed in the mark inactive there is no date range you do, because it's going to look for anything that's missing, right? So it's going to delete every record in the database that is missing in the SharePoint list still, which normally is archived items, but also you're going to see, and maybe some of y'all may know this too, that some people will just go delete items out of SharePoint, right? They'll just go to the production list and just go, hey, I just want to delete this thing. Well, that's going to get rid of that one in the database too, because that one, if you just delete something here, which is a bad way to do this, by the way, because you want to complete and cancel and everything, and then you can archive. But if you delete this item, it still thinks it's open in the database, right? And so it doesn't know anything different. So the system still thinks it's good and still tries to look at it. And that causes a lot of performance issues too. So that's what mark inactive does. And I think that's the topic of that. Oh, I wanted to mention something, I think a little bit more on the mark inactive. We'll go back to the PowerPoint. We talked about the items and the item counts and all these things, right? I just wanted to give you some examples of some clients that we've had in the past that have a large sum of data that's being archived. And so they have items in the assignment, their assignment table list, which is usually the largest count list in Winshuttle's product, the assignment table, can have millions upon millions of records. We have a client right now that has over 128 million in there. They don't archive often. That's part of the difficulty there. But other clients might have 5 or 6 million records. And when you archive, let's say 4,000 or 5,000 records, you could be clearing out 150, 200,000, 300,000 assignment records out of that because of just how many tasks are in the workflow. Because every task in a workflow is an assignment. Even plugins are assignments for the system. So all those get added to the assignment table. And so you could, when you archive, you could be clearing out 500,000 records in the database, which is great because the database will perform a whole lot better after that, usually. And if you're deleting millions of records, like we've had to archive, 10, 20,000 sometimes at some clients, you're talking about millions of assignment rows that you can clear out, and that will improve performance greatly for a time being until, again, this happens again and you have a lot of records again, and then you need to archive. So this is important to kind of stay on the archive and mark inactive process scenario, over time. So, all right, our third topic, purge process data. It's similar to mark inactive in that it deletes database records, but it does it a little bit differently. So the purge process data is actually a task, again, that's going to look at all these tables. So the mark inactive does the same thing. You have tables like the WF process, WF assignment, WF performer, all of these tables that are a part of a process. And the purge process data actually is going to go in and purge this data that's completed. So any item that's completed is going to be purged. And the reason why that gets purged, now you may not even archive the same way here. You may just purge also. You don't have to archive, but you can purge. Purge deletes the database record, but doesn't delete the SharePoint item record at all. So the reason behind that is when an item is completed, you really don't need the database anymore. So if you looked at our information here, this is the production list, right? I have all of my production form data in here, right? So you have the columns, whatever those columns are. I have the final form view, right? And then also I have the history viewer here too. So I can actually view the history of that. I did not install it here, but you would have the Winshuttle history viewer for archive purposes here. And so you could actually view everything without the database. Because right now, if I click on Winshuttle history, it's actually going to go into the database and find it for me, right? And so if I had purged that data, I'm not going to be able to do that here. I'm going to get an error. So because the data is no longer there. So normally what we see with the purge process step is usually the client will try to only purge what's been archived. But I'll show you in the scheduler, it does look a little bit differently. So along the way. So the purge process data, again, is deleting out of the database. The goal is to clean up the database, right? And I have a note here on what I just showed you about the Winshuttle history fail. What'll happen, we've seen this at clients where they purge process data that they hadn't archived yet, and so somebody went and tried to view the normal Winshuttle history, and it went to the database and it wasn't there. So you just get an error. So they have to click on the archived history viewer choice in the menu for that, to do that. So, but that's why a lot of clients will try to stay in sync with what their archive is. If they've archived a certain amount of records, they're going to purge process that same amount if they can along the way. So the schedule is the same way, Winshuttle Workflow Central Administration. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that back up. Any questions yet on the way? Giving you a lot of information, but
we are good to go. No questions.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Jody. Yep. Okay, so under the scheduler again, if we click on scheduler, go back one, so we just follow this process again. We can actually see that there actually is a purge process data. There's also purge background job, totally different thing. So purge process data. And you'll notice this one looks almost the same as mark inactive, but it actually is different. You actually do pick a site and a list that you're going to purge from. So again, what I would do is I would pick my production list that I want to purge process data on, so the demo archiving, right? And again, you have your same choice with the archive, right? Scheduler now along the way, so we know what that is now. Now you have something here that is, it's very similar to, I think, the older than in your archive is purge data older than, but this time around it's months and not days. So this is how many months back you want to go. So if I had picked 60 or 90 on the archive, I would have to do, you know, like that's 90, that's 3 months, right? So that would be the difference. So you have to make sure you wouldn't do 30 because that's going to be way too far back that you're purging older than. So you have to kind of be conscious of what this is. And if you did a date range, you have to really translate that into what you want to actually purge. If you want to try to keep it close to the same as your archive. As you can see, it's a little difficult here, so you got to think about this one a little bit if you're doing purge process data along the way. But let's say we want to go back 3 months, like I think I did 90 days. So, and then again, same principle, the users to notify, you would do that, and then you would just hit save. So that's how you would do that. And so that's only going to purge this list data. It's not going to purge every list data, just this one, right? So a little bit different. So if you have 5 or 6 different processes, you're going to have to schedule 5 or 6 different purge process data if that's what you want to do. On the mark inactive, you're just going to schedule one. It's going to handle it all, but it's going to take a lot longer to process it because it's actually validating if an item is in SharePoint compared to the database for each record. So it's a really time-consuming process that it works at there. And that's what purge process data does there. So we're almost done here. And again, the purge process, similar principle. You know, again, the goal is to get your database as clean and as low in record count as you can, right? And so since you have archived and you have the archive information, you may not need the database data. And so because of that, you can actually clean up a lot of this. And that will really greatly help the situation. Again, I've seen the purge process and or mark inactive go from a form load or a web parts loading on the page from 30, 40 seconds to 5 seconds type of thing, 5 to 10 seconds. So it does improve it greatly if you're in need of that along the way. If you're already doing this, it's going to just stay running very well as best as it can there. So, all right. I think we do have a couple of minutes. So here's our recap here. Regularly schedule move archive data once a month or quarterly or something like that is a good thing. Many of our clients do a month, some do quarterly. After the move archive data, run the schedule, the mark inactive process or a purge process data to make sure these items have been removed from the database, right? That was the goal here, is to keep the database clean also along the way. And since we have a couple of minutes, a little bit of a bonus material here. So another great scenario that I always recommend and usually don't see by default, because a lot of the times the Winshuttle product is set up by the team that really is not involved in the database side mostly. So what we usually, I always recommend is a SQL maintenance plan of some sort. So this is a SQL Server product. So it's creating SQL Server databases. And you can create a SQL Server maintenance plan. Now this would be for a DBA mostly, but I do this a lot for our clients that we have access to that information and access to be able to do that. Is we'll create a SQL maintenance plan that you're going to execute against that Winshuttle database. And the key items here that we want to point to are the statistics. And that is a scenario of how it finds data, very similar to indexing, but statistics is greatly impacts the Winshuttle database and how fast it queries along the way. And I think I have this information here, yeah. I have seen this so often now that if the database is not updated in statistics, if it's stale, a lot of times we'll see stale statistics being something over a week old. So a lot of times I'll come to a client that may have the system and their statistics are updated 5 months ago, right? And so their web parts are loading and it's taken 30, 40, 60 seconds to load a web part on their page, where you see your forms and your tasks and stuff. And that. So as soon as we update statistics, it's 3 seconds, 5 seconds. So that is the big difference there. And if you live on a page where the web part loads every 40 seconds and you go to that page 40 times a day, you're wasting a lot of time, right? So anything you can do to improve that is good. So 3 to 5 seconds is much better. So I always have that updated daily. So I wrote down this is a daily task that needs to be done. On occasion, some clients may need it more than once a day, but I would say daily is the most important thing. I think just get that done because it doesn't take long. You run it, execute it sometime in the early morning hours before everybody gets in. It takes usually about 10 minutes, 5 minutes to do an update of statistics. And that will improve it greatly over the course of that day. And then it does the same thing the next day. And the reason why you have to update statistics is, there's a lot of data being entered into this database. And every time a record is entered, or deleted, by the way, then the SQL Server doesn't know about that. And so it knows from the index and the statistics where things are. And if you take out stuff or add stuff that doesn't have an update to the statistics, then it doesn't know how to find it. So what it has to do is it has to do more of a table scan type of query. And that is a lot slower. And that's why this is important. And we also talked about indexing, because indexing can get fragmented over time in a database because you're deleting data, adding data. Usually indexing is a little bit more intensive, so once a week is usually good enough for that. And usually people do that on a Saturday or Sunday. They'll just schedule it in a SQL maintenance plan for that. So that's the 2 options there for the bonus material. So, and very good. Outside of that, I think that is the end of that. And so now, any other questions if there are any? And if there's not, that is okay.
Nope, no questions came through.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for your time. I appreciate that. And let's move on here. So we have some new events coming up here. I think I've got them here. We've had a Automate Your Financial Process up on Thursday, September 10th. And then, of course, our next web tips, Thursday, September 17th. And anything you ever need any information on or anything like that, we can find that. You can email us at info@clearprocesssolutions.com. Of course, you can go to our clearprocesssolutions.com website, and you can see the web tips and also on YouTube along the way too. So all kinds of information there. So definitely check out our website because we are doing so many different things and so many different platforms and stuff. So thank you very much and have a wonderful day. And we will see you soon. Bye-bye.